what was the point I was making? Okay, so what is the question that Dhritarashtra is asking? We know he's asking what's happening, but what does he really mean by it?
Are they going to fight or not? Are my sons going to win or not?
Are my sons going to win or not? That's exactly the question. And who does anyone know when is that question answered in the Bhagavad-Gītā?
Right at the end?
Right at the end, exactly. The point where it's actually where the first question is answered, the first question is asked at the beginning. Kim makurvata Sanjaya, right? Did they win? Did they win? And how does the Bhagavad-Gītā end? Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, right? So wherever Krishna is, right, there is always victory, right? So he ends with a no, right? So this whole thing is building up to that. In one sense, we say the ending of the Bhagavad-Gīta is Sarva Dharman Parityajya, but that's in terms of the message of the Bhagavad-Gīta. But the actual answer to this question is answered at the very, very end of the Bhagavad-Gīta. So we can see here that the Bhagavad-Gīta is structured very nicely. Like there's a strong level of intentionality in the text. Okay. So, and that's also why it ends with that text. So we're going to touch on the theme of Bhakta VATSALAAA, which is a very, very central theme. Now to do this, we have a nice pastime from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm sure many of you will have an idea which pastime we're going to be touching upon. I'm going to share the screens and we can have some people take different roles. I would like our illiterate Brahmin, Divyansh Prabhu. I asked you, no, not as an insult. The illiterate Brahmin is like the greatest person. So Divyansh Prabhu, you be our illiterate Brahmin.
That's fine. Yeah, I don't...
Yeah, that wasn't a jab, Mrugank. Stop laughing.
That's fine.
And then who wants to be our Mahaprabhu? Nitai. Nitai might be Nityananda, but today he is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay? And who will our narrator be? Who wants to be narrator? Oh, maybe let's have Vigneraj then. You three can do it.
Let's go.
Okay, Vigneraj Prabhu, you'll be our narrator. So you read the stuff written in white.
Wait, did you kick me from the call or something?
No, we ended the call.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, Vigneraj, you're going to be the white writing.
Yeah.
Divyansh, you're going to be the greenish writing, which I now realize contrasts really poorly.
That's fine.
And Nitai Prabhu, are you there?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, you're going to be the golden writing, golden for Mahaprabhu. Okay. So let's begin. Let's begin hearing this pastime.
Okay. In the holy place of Sri Ranga-kshetra, a Brahmin Vaishnava used to visit the temple daily and recite the entire text of the Bhagavad-Gītā. The Brahmana regularly read the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-Gītā in great transcendental ecstasy, but because he could not pronounce the words correctly, people used to joke about him. Due to his incorrect pronunciation, people sometimes criticized him and laughed at him, but he did not care. He was full of ecstasy due to reading the Bhagavad-Gītā and was personally very happy. While reading the book, the Brahmana experienced transcendental bodily transformations. The hairs on his body stood on end, tears welled up in his eyes, and his body trembled and perspired as he read. Seeing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the Brahmana,
"My dear sir, why are you in such ecstatic love? What portion of the Bhagavad-Gītā gives you such transcendental pleasure?"
The Brahmana replied,
I am an illiterate and therefore do not know the meaning of the words. Sometimes I read the Bhagavad-Gītā correctly and sometimes incorrectly, but in any case, I am doing this in compliance with the orders of my spiritual master.
The Brahmana continued,
Actually, I only see Lord Krishna sitting on a chariot as Arjuna's charioteer. Taking the reins in his hands, he appears very beautiful and blackish. While seeing Lord Krishna sitting in a chariot and instructing Arjuna, I'm filled with ecstatic happiness. As long as I read the Bhagavad-Gītā, I simply see the Lord's beautiful features. It is for this reason that I am reading the Bhagavad-Gītā and my mind cannot be distracted from this.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told the Brahmana.
Indeed, you are an authority in the reading of the Bhagavad-Gītā. Whatever you know constitutes the real purport of the Bhagavad-Gītā.
After saying this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced the Brahmana, and the Brahmana, catching the lotus feet of the Lord, began to cry.
Jai, Gauranga, a very famous pastime, but a very sweet pastime, right? It's very wholesome. And what's really nice here is this really illustrates, right, the beauty of the Bhagavad-Gītā. Just a quick side note before I get onto that. As we know, Nandan Prabhu compiled the list of stuff that can potentially be assessed, right? And he sent it out into the WhatsApp group. If any of you didn't see that PDF, check in the WhatsApp group. He sent it after everyone joined, I'm pretty sure. And one of the things that we've already touched upon is the significance of Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetre, right? So just keep it in mind. And this is no longer in the zone of, you can zone out this lesson, right? We're touching on points now that might come up. So just keep that in mind. Yeah. But here we're finding Mahaprabhu, he's in this pastime, he's touching upon the real purport of the Bhagavad-Gītā. Because what does Mahaprabhu say? He doesn't say, oh, you found a cute point, that's very sweet, right? That's very sweet and cute, you've understood something of the Bhagavad-Gītā. This is good for your level, right? He didn't say, oh, you can't read, so I guess that's good enough for you, right? That's not what Mahaprabhu said. What did Mahaprabhu say? He said, you are an authority in the reading of the Bhagavad-Gītā. Whatever you know constitutes the real purport of the Bhagavad-Gītā. This understanding of Krishna being the charioteer of Arjuna, this is the highest purport of the Bhagavad-Gītā, and we've already found it in the first section of the first chapter. We found it before any philosophy has been spoken, right? We found already the highest truth of the Bhagavad-Gītā. And where do we find it the most? We find it in this text. Mrugank Prabhu, would you like to recite the Sanskrit?
Sure thing. Arjuna uvacha senayor ubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya mechyuta yavadetan niriksheham yodhu kamanavasthitan kairmaya saha yodhavyam asmin ranasamudhyame.
Yeah, so thank you. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms, right? This text here is revealing the highest philosophy we can possibly imagine. This text here is one of the most philosophically profound in the entirety of the Bhagavad-Gītā. This is why we shouldn't brush past the first chapter as just some, just some conch shells, it's just a little bit of, just a bit of details before we get into the Bhagavad-Gītā proper. Here we find higher philosophy that's present anywhere, not just in the Bhagavad-Gītā, anywhere else. This is the highest of all philosophy because not only is Krishna cooperating with his devotee, not only is Krishna helping his devotee, not only is Krishna serving and protecting his devotee, much, much more. Krishna is being ordered around like a simple, taxi driver, right? Just like that, he's being ordered around. And that's why it's very significant. What name is Krishna being called in the Sanskrit? Achyutya. What does Achyutya mean? The infallible one, the unconquerable one, right? Ajita is another name. Brahma, when he prays to Krishna, what does he say? He prays, oh Ajita, oh unconquerable one. You become Jita, the conquerable one, by the influence of your devotees. Oh unconquerable one, you are conquered by your devotees. This is the highest philosophy we can imagine. How profound is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead empties himself of all authority and power and control and sovereignty that he is entitled to in an act of pure kenosis in order to serve his devotees? Where do we find any higher philosophy? This is the first word that is spoken in between Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad-Gītā. By the first words that are spoken in this conversation between them, we've already established the highest philosophy. we don't even need to continue doing this Bhakti-śāstrī course. We can call it a day. You don't even need to finish the first chapter, right? We've already established the fullness of the philosophy, right? Here it is, that Krishna is being ordered around what to do by his devotee. And then we'll find people, and I'm sure maybe some of you have encountered these people, and they'll say, oh, you know, Bhagavad-gītā, actually it's a metaphor, right? It's metaphorical. The field represents your life, and the chariot represents your mind, and Arjuna represents your soul, and Krishna represents whatever, blah, 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 right? Whatever sort of speculation they want to come up with. And they'll feel very intellectual. Here we go. We don't believe any of this literal nonsense. We're not taking this text literally. We're so much smarter than that, right? We're taking this as a metaphor, right? And you know what? You can take it, right? Take your metaphorical explanation and come up with your self-help analogies and self-help conclusions. But with that methodology, you will not come to as profound a conclusion as you will come by understanding the beautiful simplicity of the literal truth that is being shown here. Come up with your metaphorical explanations and show me that Krishna is Bhakta VATSALAAA. Come up with your metaphorical explanations and show me something as beautiful and sublime and transcendently powerful as the idea that Krishna is conquered by the love of his devotees. You will not be able to with all of these speculative wranglings, right? And so in the arrogance of all of this intellectual speculation, you obscure the beauty and the profundity of the simple, plain reading. I'm not saying literalness for fanaticism's sake. I'm not saying literalness for fundamentalism's sake, right? I'm saying literalness because I will get the highest and most beautiful philosophy if I understand this text as it is. This is the beauty of the Bhagavad-gītā. And we've already found it here, that Krishna is conquered by his devotee, right? Krishna is being ordered around. Achyutya, the infallible one, is very, very fallible in his bias towards his devotees. I once heard in one class that we can, on the one hand, consider it's not bias, because Krishna, he's just reciprocating the mood that his devotee is responding. But one person might say, oh, well, Krishna is biased towards his devotees. Then fine, say it. He's biased towards his devotees. But that bias doesn't fault him. It makes him more beautiful. Just in the same way that the spots on the moon make the moon more beautiful, not less beautiful. Krishna's apparent fault of his bias towards his devotees makes him Krishna, the all-attractive Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here we find Achyutya. And our acharyas have said that Achyutya here doesn't mean the infallible, perfect one who is never ordered around or anything. That's what it might mean if we approach this text with all the awe and reverence, but not when we approach this text with the revelation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this text, Achyutya means he infallibly will serve his devotees. He infallibly will serve the wishes and desires of his devotees. This is what infallible means, right? Krishna's infallibility is not found in him not having a fault. Krishna's infallibility is not found in him being unable to fall down or anything else. Krishna's infallibility is found in that he will never fail to do the desire of his devotees. And therefore, what does Krishna do when Arjuna orders him around? He does that. In the next verse, we'll find Krishna very nicely brings Arjuna's chariot in front of the armies. Here we find Achyutya in the highest and deepest sense. Let me just check. Yeah, so this is the meaning of this text. And here we find, again, you can just wrap it all up, go home. Unfortunately, we're using the Mayapura Institute shloka list, which doesn't include the shloka, but if I can encourage you to learn any shloka that is not on the list, I would encourage this shloka. Here we find it, the beginning and end, the summum bonum of our whole philosophy done, right? This is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nandan Prabhu, you have a question?
Prabhu, isn't it also true that it's not just being ordered around by Arjuna? Because in a fight, you can't have the time, go left, go right. They kick their charioteers in the back to go right, and then kick their charioteers on the left to go left. And in this way, he was actually kicking Krishna with his feet, and Krishna was there just taking it all in, for the pleasure of his devotee.
100%. So he was enjoying, and Krishna was enjoying it. Krishna was thinking, wow, I have that honor of touching the lotus feet of my devotee, right? That was the mindset as Arjuna, because that's correct. That's how charioteers would do it. They would sit up on the back and they would sit in the front and they would get kicked in the back. And that's also one of the reasons why Bhishma, we know in the past times, Bhishma makes the vow to fight on the other side and this and that, right? And those are all valid reasons. I don't mean to this and that to disregard them, just that we're familiar with them. But another internal reason that's given why Bhishma fought on the other side of the war is Bhishma is a great devotee of the Lord. And Bhishma thought, if I fight on Arjuna's side, I will only see the back of Krishna. But if I fight on the opposite side, I'll be able to see his lotus face. So like that, we can find there's all of these deep, deep reasonings as we go into the battle, which is a tension that I actually want to draw out. And this is a little tangential. I was going to touch upon it later, but I'll touch upon it now because you brought it up, Nandan, Prabhu. Is that when we read the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna can seem very alien. Krishna can seem very different to the Krishna we're used to. We as Gauriya Vaishnavas, we're used to that sweet Krishna who, as we know, he's running away crying as his mother chases him. And then his mother, what is it described in Damodarashtakam? It's described that Mother Jashoda captures Krishna from behind. What does it mean when you're being caught from behind? It means that until the very last second, you were trying to escape. It means at no point you gave up to turn around, right? That's what being caught from behind means. This is the Krishna we know and love, right? This sweet Krishna who is constantly conquered by his devotees. And then we hear the Bhagavad-Gita where Krishna is saying, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, right? I am the source of all material worlds. We hear this Krishna who's Hrishikesh, the master of the senses. And not in the sense that we can think of, he's a master of the senses because he's beautiful, but because he literally is king of all the universe, right? This Krishna can sometimes seem exotic to Gauriya Vaishnavas. And this, I don't think we should feel weird to have this tension because this tension is there. There's a few other tensions in the Bhagavad-Gita that we'll touch upon next week more, where Arjuna does seem to have a few good points, right? And stuff like this. I really want us as we study this to embrace these tensions, to really think, why do we study this text as Gauriya Vaishnavas then, right? This text seems to present, why are we so interested? And we are interested. Our acharyas have written so much in this. What nectar can we take out of this as Gauriya Vaishnavas, right? That's sort of a tension we want to pull out. And sometimes we'll find it by hidden meanings in the texts, but also the simple philosophy itself is also very relevant. So we'll touch upon this as we go along, but it is something we should keep in mind. Sometimes when we read something and we think, this is such a different Krishna than Krishna I'm used to, we should actually embrace that feeling, right? Because that feeling is very important. And we'll touch upon it as we get deeper into the Bhagavad-Gita as it is. But there is this tension, right? There's lots of tensions throughout the Bhagavad-Gita. And rather than ignoring the tensions, we should embrace the tensions because in the tensions, we'll find a lot of deep truths, right? Yeah. Okay. So there we find it, okay? This is it. This is the highest truth, okay? So please, I hope, I think I got a little worked up, but I think I've made the point, right? That this text is very, very important, right? This is the beginning and the end of our philosophy. Bus, done, right? So this is Bhakta-VATSALAAA. And this is a very central theme. When we study the whole Bhagavad-Gita, we should remember that the Bhagavad-Gita, the conversation begins with Arjuna ordering Achyutya, right? So we should interpret the Bhagavad-Gita in this mood, right? It's very clear from the get-go what's happening here. So then now let's go a little bit further back and we'll go now to talk about the rest of the conversation and we'll get as far into the conversation as we can and then we'll continue going with the conversation next week. We'll finish chapter 1 next week. So then now we're going to go back to Duryodhana's diplomacy. So now we can open up our Bhagavad-Gitas again and we can go to text 2. And please feel free to ask any questions. If you have any questions or nice comments like Nandan Prabhu's. Okay, so Sanjaya uvacha drishtva pandavani kam vyudham duryodhanastada acharyam upasangamya rajavachanam abravit. Uma Mataji, would you like to read out the translation?
Yes, Prabhuji. Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. So now we find again, thank you, Mataji. We find again another interesting point, another redundancy that's actually pointing out a very significant thing. King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Now we might think, Vachanam abravit in the Sanskrit. We might think, oh, why did he say that? What else is he going to speak? You know what I mean? Of course he's going to speak words, right? What else is there to speak? I don't think there's a long laundry list of things you can speak, right? We only do speak in words, right? He's not going to speak in flowers, right? So he's going to speak in words. Why is that, right? We shouldn't think that, Vyasadeva just got a bit lazy, he just got a bit lazy. He just thought, oh, I need to fill up this meter. I need to fill up this shloka. Let me just throw in an extra word, right? It wasn't like that, okay? What is indicated here is he is speaking words, means there's something very specific about his words. He's speaking very diplomatic words. And we'll find this. In Duryodhana's words, there's a lot of diplomacy, right? Duryodhana, he is speaking words, very cunning words, if you will, right? That reflect Duryodhana's intelligence and ability. Duryodhana is speaking words because he's speaking very politically. He's speaking with that politician's efficiency. So there's lots of double meanings, lots of depth to his words, okay? So that's what he means by speaking the following words. Now Sanjaya, he's spoken this text in order to calm Dhritarashtra down, right? Because Dhritarashtra is getting worked up. At least now he knows that the fight went ahead, right? So now his only anxiety is if the Pandavas win. And unfortunately, that anxiety comes true. Well, unfortunately for Dhritarashtra, right? But his anxiety that, oh no, my sons won't fight. That anxiety is gone, right? Because he knows here is Duryodhana going to Drona Acharya, right? And Duryodhana, at least, he's making a good step, right? It's a difficult time. He's going to his spiritual master, not his spiritual master, his military master, if you will, right? He's going to the Acharya. He's going to the Guru, which is a very good thing, right? So he's going there, right? And he's going over. And then what happens? Pashyaitam panduputranam acharya mahatim chamum yudham drupada putrena tava shishyena dhimata. Vidhi Mataji, would you like to read out the translation?
Sure, Prabhu. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada.
Right, very nice, very nice. So here we can find, again, so the beginning of Duryodhana's diplomatic words, right? Don't worry about reading the slide yet. Just putting it up because he's making one central point. Our acharyas say that Duryodhana was actually trying to sass his spiritual master. He was being sarcastic. He was being a bit mocking, right, as he was saying this. Because what does he say? He says, look how nicely arranged is the army on the other side, right? How amazing. I wonder who's organized it. Oh, that's right. It's the person you trained, oh great spiritual master. That's the sort of attitude that Duryodhana's bringing, right? It's a very sarcastic one. Tava shishyena, right? He's saying your disciple, right? He's saying, oh, I wonder who taught him how to arrange armies so well, right? This is a sort of sarcastic mood that Duryodhana's bringing when he's saying this, right? So he's saying, Tava shishyena, right? You have trained this person. And who is this person? Who can tell me? Who is the person who has arranged these armies?
Drishtadyumna.
Drishtadyumna. But does Duryodhana say, oh, Drishtadyumna, he's arranged the armies? No, he says the son of Drupada, right? Now, can anyone guess why does he say the son of Drupada?
Because he got the rivalry between Drupada and Dronacharya.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Vidhi Mataji, you raised your hand. Did you have something else to say as well?
Same thing, that Drupada and Dronacharya were rivals. And
Yes.
Drupada had actually vowed that he would avenge for his father by killing Dronacharya.
Exactly. As Nandan Prabhu put, they've got beef, right? And they do. And why is this part of the diplomatic words? The reason why is because we all know Drona, he's a bit, he likes the Pandavas, right? He doesn't dislike them. So here we find Duryodhana, he's riling Drona up. he's trying to say, don't you dare, because at this point in the fight, what will happen is Yudhishthira Maharaj, he will say, if anyone wants to join our side of the fight, they can. And according to Kshatriya rules, he can go. He can go join the other side of the fight. If he wants to, go ahead, right? So here, he's trying to make sure, of course, he knows that he won't, right? But there's this option there. So Duryodhana right now, he's trying to reinforce his troops. But he's also trying to make sure he'll get the best fight out of people like Bhishma and all, who have to fight, right? Who he doesn't even worry about them leaving, right? But he still wants to make sure they're going to give the best fight. So he's getting him angry, right? So we all know the pastime. Drona and Dronacharya and Drupad, when they were children, they went to Gurukul together and they were best friends, you know? And as children say, you know, Drupad, he said, when I'm older, Drona, you know, if you want anything from me, I'll give it to you, right? Even though he was going to be a rich prince and, you know, Brahmins live very simply, they had this beautiful friendship, right? It's only later on in life that we learn bigotry and all these things, right? As they say, no children are racist. That's a saying they have. We can find the same thing. No children are classist either, right? So we find so they have this beautiful friendship. And then they grow up and I'm sure most of us here aren't too much in contact with most of our friends from primary school or even high school, right? So, you know, we have some contact because of the internet maybe, but by and large, we're not close friends. So the same thing happened. They go off in their own ways. And then Dronacharya, well, he's got his children, right? He's got his son, right? Ashvatthama, you know, the noble Ashvatthama. Not really. Ashvatthama is not a nice guy. But anyways, at this point, he's a cute child and we can't hate a child, can we? So he's poor, he's struggling, and he's a poor Brahmin, right? And his son's never had milk. And so some boys, we know children can be very cute, but they can also be very, very cruel, right? Very cruel children can be. And so the other children, they were bullying him. And they ground up some chalk, or some stories say differently, they ground up some rice grains. I've heard different variations. They put it in some water and they give it to him and they say, this is milk. And Ashvatthama, he drinks the milk and he says, oh, what? This is milk, right? And so Dronacharya, he's very depressed. He's very sad to see this, you know. My beautiful son, right? Here he is and all the children are mocking him. I can't provide for my son even the taste of milk. And so then Drona, he goes out and he says, well, I'm going to find a cow, right? I'm going to find one. And so he goes out and he says, well, how am I going to find a cow, right? It's not that easy. And then he thinks, oh, well, you know, my good friend, he told me I would be able to get a cow. Or I would be able to get anything if I can go to my good old friend Drupad. So he goes and visits Drupad. And we all know what happens. Everyone gets really angry at this part of the story. I know I do, you know. Drupad, he says, who are you? You know, what, you're requesting? We're friends, right? Because Drona, he introduces himself as a friend. Drupad says, friendship can only be had by equals. Who are you? You're no one, right? Get away. And of course, Drona, understandably, his feelings were hurt. So anyways, Drona, he went out and he became trained by Parashuram. It's a long, long pastime. We won't get into all the details. And eventually, with all that training, he gets employed by Bhishma to be the teacher, right, for the royal family. And because of that, he gets a very high position with lots of wealth available to him, right? He gets that very, very prestigious teaching position, right? He's the tenured professor at Oxford, if you will. So with this position, he's got lots of money and everything, right? Available to him if he wishes, in the form of dakshina, right? But when it comes time for the Kauravas and the Pandavas to give dakshina, the offering which they give to the guru, right? He says, I don't want money. I don't want anything. I want you to bring back Drupad, right? I want you to bring him, conquer him, embarrass him. The Kauravas go and they fail, which makes me wonder why they have any hope of, why they think they have any hope of winning this fight, right? So the Kauravas go and they fail. But then, as we know, the Pandavas, they go and succeed. And then it goes back and forth. I don't want to go throughout the whole pastime. Drupada, he's now completely embarrassed, right? And after that, he performs a yagya to produce a child who will kill Dronacharya, right? And that child is Drishtadyumna. And when Drishtadyumna is born, a voice from the sky, an Akashvani, it says, this child will definitely kill Dronacharya. And so, as we know, then it's pretty guaranteed he's going to kill, well, Dronacharya, right? But still, when that child grows up a little more, Dronacharya, he still teaches him all of the military knowledge very nicely, right? He still goes ahead and teaches him. And Prabhupada now, he makes the point. This is a true Brahmin, right? This is Vedic culture. How liberal he is. Even though he knows this child will likely end up killing him, he still goes ahead and teaches him all of the tools which he uses to kill him, right? And this is now where we find Srila Prabhupada's points, right, on this text. So Prabhupada has written, the word is used, dhimata, very intelligent. He has learned this military science from you just to kill you. Dhimata tava shishyena, your disciple he has arranged. This is the pointing out so that he may be angry. This rascal has learned from me and he wants to kill me. So Duryodhana, he's thinking the Dronacharya, he thinks like me, right? He'll think in this low way like me. And so he's trying to aggravate Drona even with this way. But Dronacharya, he's not aggravated by that, right? He might be aggravated by the mention of Drupad, but he won't be aggravated by the mention of Tava Shishyena. Why? Srila Prabhupada says, but no, duty is duty. Everyone will die. Nobody will exist. So nobody should be afraid of death. This is Vedic civilization. Death is inevitable, as sure as death. Who can avoid death? So being afraid of death, we should not deviate from our duties, real duty. That is Vedic civilization. So Duryodhana wanted to point out, this boy, your disciple, it is fixed up that he's meant for killing you. And he has arranged nicely military phalanx. A phalanx just means a military formation, just to defeat you. And he has learned this art from you. Therefore, he is using this word, dhimata. So Srila Prabhupada, he's saying he's trying to rev Dronacharya up. But instead, again, we find Saraswati is on the mouth of Duryodhana. And instead, he's pointing out the glories of the Brahmins, right? Dharma is there, right? Dharma will be fulfilled. And we also find the same thing. Why is Bhishma on their side, right? Why is Bhishma on their side? Because of dharma, right? Death may come, death may not come, but dharma is essential, right? So this is true Brahminical culture. There is no fear of death. There is only an embracing of duties. This also is a point, by the way, if you look at your question sheet. So wink, wink, okay? Keep that in mind. Okay, so we'll keep going then with Duryodhana's words. Please butt in or raise your hand with any questions, okay, as they come up, or send them in the message. So then we find, in the next text then, we find here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjun, right? Great fighters like Yuyudhan, Virata, and Drupad. So he's saying this now to get everyone else afraid, saying, you actually are going to have to do, after he's tried to get everyone aggravated, now he's saying, oh, well, we've got to get everyone worked up. This is going to be a heavy fight. Drishtadyumna, yeah, he's prophesied to kill Dronacharya, but he's not the scary fighter here. The scary fighters are people like Yuyudhan, Bhima, Arjun, right? All of these great, great fighters, they're here, right? And what are they? They are Maharathas. So just so you know what a Maharatha is, I've given the definition here. A Maharatha is one who can fight alone with 10,000 archers, who is an expert in both weapons and scriptures. And then there's all the different other types of rathas. Again, not so important. I just wanted to explain that Maharatha is a technical term, right? It's not just some glorification. And if we can understand that this is somebody who can fight 10,000 archers, that's maybe an intimidating opponent. And if there's many, well, then that's very intimidating indeed. So he's making this point. Another reason why he's mentioned Bhima, and this is also, again, in the list of questions that may potentially come up in your closed book assessment, Bhima is very scary because he's taken 3 terrible, scary vows, right? That are very, very scary and will incite fear into all of the people who are fighting. Who can tell me one of those 3 vows?
He said he was going to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, right?
Yes, he said he'll kill all 100 of them. They're all dead.
He'll drink the blood of the
Dushashan.
Yeah. And the third one was he will break the leg of Duryodhana.
Yes. And with Dushashan, he'll take his blood and he'll also There's a little sideburn. He'll also wash. He'll wash Draupadi's hair, right? Because Dushashan was the one who, like, you know, he was playing around with the hair, right? So because of that offense, he'll do that. The sons of Dhritarashtra, he'll just kill because, because they have it coming, right? And Duryodhana, he will break his thigh because when they were disrobing Draupadi, you know, he tapped his thigh in this really taunting way. What did he do? As she was being disrobed, he tapped his thigh in this sort of you know, provocative way, right? Even today, if somebody did that, you would be angry, right? If somebody did that to any woman, you'd think, you know, what a jerk, right? But now you can imagine in Vedic civilization, right? Yes, Nitai, not that he played with the hair. You get what I mean. Like he was taunting with the hair, right? So that's why she said she'll wash the hair. Okay, so those 3 points, note them down. So this is another reason why he's mentioned Bhim, right? Because Bhim is very scary. They all know he's taken these vows, right? So he's trying to put the fear of God into them. Now we come to, then we hear, you know, the more of the list. We'll go past this section. I'm sure you've all read it. The list is interesting, but we'll go ahead for time's sake. And we'll go on to the next one now. So we hear the list of people: Dhritarashtra, Chaitanya, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, and Shaibya. We hear all of these other fighters. And then we get to this one. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitim Jayaha Ashvathama Vikarnascha Saumadattis Tathaivacha. There are great personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashvathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Now again, there are very diplomatic words being said here. There is a dilemma he has because he wants to encourage 2 people in particular. Who are the 2 most senior fighters in the battle? Bhishma and Drona, right? Drona Acharya and Bhishma. So he has a dilemma. Who do I say first, right? Because you give the greatest honor to the person you say first, right? Do I say Drona first or do I say Bhishma first? And here we can find the great intelligence of Duryodhana, because who does he say first? He says Drona, right? You. Because even though Drona and Bhishma are both equal, yes, he's very expert in game theory. This is what we're seeing. Duryodhana is very, very intelligent. He's saying Drona first because Drona is the Brahmin. So he's thinking a Kshatriya will not be offended if I glorify a Brahmin, right? But a Brahmin will be offended if I glorify a Kshatriya first because of the way society works. So therefore, he's saying Drona first, then Bhishma. Okay? Next, he says Karna. Why does he say Karna? Does anyone know? The reason why he says Karna is because Karna has taken a vow. Karna has said, you know what? Why should I even fight in this battle? That old guy Bhishma, he's just going to take all the glory anyways, you know? We'll all fight, we'll do a good little battle, and then Bhishma will parade around and take the glory, just as everyone's always taken my glory all my life. We all know how he likes to complain, right? So like this, Karna, he was complaining. And so he took a vow. I will not fight in the battle until Bhishma is dead, right? He's taken this vow. He said that. So therefore, Duryodhana, he's mentioning Karna to sort of rile Bhishma up, right? He's riling him up. He's saying, you know, he's saying, do you want this Karna guy who's just waiting for you to die to let you die? Do you want to give this guy who keeps on talking smack about you? Do you want to give him the satisfaction of actually fighting and then taking all of the glory? So he's doing this in order to get Bhishma motivated. He's also saying it in order that Karna gets motivated, to remind Karna. And also, by the way, if Bhishma does die, we are relying on you, so I haven't forgotten about you, okay? So he's meaning both of these things. And then, and we'll probably end on this point to open up to questions. Then we have the mentions of Kripa and Ashvathama. Kripa and Ashvathama are both relatives of Drona. And so he's mentioning them, right? He's saying, look, you've got relatives on your side, on this side. You have to fight, because just because you like Arjuna a lot, don't forget, you've also got people you love on this side as well. right? That's why he mentions the two. Here we have the family members. And then we have Vikarna. Why is Vikarna mentioned? Rohan Prabhu, do you know why Vikarna is mentioned?
I think he objected to the war during the assembly. Is that
Very
right?
close. He objected to the disrobing of Draupadi, right? He didn't stay silent. He was like, hey, this is really, really wrong, what we're doing here. And so because of that, but yes, you're right. It's because he had that objection. And therefore, Duryodhana had a fear, well, when Yudhishthira calls for people to defect, he might defect, right? So even though Vikarna is not really such a significant person in the army, he's encouraging him. He's like saying, don't worry, brother, I remember you. You know, it's like that person, it's like, you know, those people, you know, manipulative people, you know, they'll only be nice to you and they can get something out of you, right? That's what Duryodhana's doing here to Vikarna. So like this, we find Duryodhana, he's not just listing off names. He's being very, very intelligent in what he's doing. He's being very intentional. And therefore we can find Vachanam Ibravit. He is speaking many words, right? He is speaking very, very intelligently. And then what does he say next? Then he says, there are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake, all of whom are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and are all experienced in military science. And there we find again, Saraswati, she's just pouring it out, right? There are many heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake, and they will lay down their lives. Now this is foreshadowing. They're all gonna die, right? There's not gonna be many survivors in this war. Okay, and then next we'll reach text 10, but I think we'll save that for next week. Text 10 is very important because here we find the strong level of Duryodhana speaking multiple things in his words, right? We'll find this especially over the next two texts, text 10 and 11, before then we go onto the conch shells. So I'll open up to any questions now. I know that was a lot of info, but I've pointed out the points that you really need to take home. Yes, Nandan Prabhu.
But can you explain with Drona, what type of guru would he be considered on the level? I mean, I understand that Shiksha is the same as Diksha in the Tattva, but in terms of formality, was he kind of like a Diksha guru, or was it more just only a military science, so it's okay for Duryodhana just to talk smack to him?
Oh, well, so that's the interesting thing. You can really go into depth in this. Jiva Goswami does in the Bhakti Sandarbha, and he talks about Guru Tattva. The same respect should be accorded to him as is to regular gurus. As is to spiritual gurus. There's the same principle, actually. Because when we look at the text Acharya Mam, it's actually not speaking about spiritual life. In context, it's talking about brahmacharis just going through regular brahmachari life, which wasn't necessarily spiritual. So in context, in the Bhagavatam, when it's glorying the acharyas, it's actually glorifying the quote unquote mundane acharyas, right? So that same level of respect should be given to Drona. However, that doesn't mean that acharya doesn't necessarily give spiritual knowledge. The general principle that's given by Jiva Goswami is acharyas like that. And you could technically, and I personally do, apply that to anyone who really teaches you, right? Even if they're not a full-blown, guru, full-blown acharya or something, anyone who's taught you, if they teach you in a way that is conducive towards spiritual truth, they are to be considered manifestation of the Guru Tattva, right? As long as they're not contradicting that truth, they're like relative gurus, right? They're bringing you up to that platform. I'm now forgetting the Sanskrit word. There's a Sanskrit word that's used to make this separation. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he makes the same point. He says history teachers even, they are like that. They are in that mundane form of guru, but they're still giving knowledge. And therefore we respect them with the same level of respect. However, we don't necessarily have to follow them in every respect if they contradict what the highest guru, the spiritual guru, is teaching us. Paramarthik. Paramarthik is the name of the highest guru, but it's leaving my memory, the name of the quote unquote mundane guru. But yeah, the same respect should be given. Again, because that text in context in the Bhagavatam is actually talking about, again, the quote unquote non-paramarthik guru. Although we also definitely apply it to the paramarthik guru. Did that answer your question, or did I? Yeah, okay. Rohan Prabhu?
Would you just be able to explain why Drona is constantly called a Brahmin, even though he's acting more like a Kshatriya?
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. It's because he's a Brahmin, but he's teaching military science. So it's sort of like I have a friend, okay, and his dad's a doctor, right? And I still remember he's a bit stuck up, okay. And I was at his house once, and I called him Dr. XYZ. I won't expose him in this class, right? I called him Dr. XYZ, and the father, he stopped me and he said, "It's Professor XYZ." And we can have that point, even though he did practice as a doctor, even, right? His role is he's teaching medicine, right? So the main role of Drona is that he's teaching military science, right? So therefore he is teaching, right? He is still a Brahmin. He's still performing the educational principles, right? He's not practicing, even though he's fighting now, that's not his primary job, if you get what I mean. He's only fighting in the battle because, he knows how to fight, if you get what I mean. But his principal job is to teach fighting. It's just coincidental that he can also fight, right? Because he needs to do that in order to teach fighting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Sri Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So I was just wondering, for with the Bhagavad-Gita, why or how does the person narrating the Bhagavad-Gita change? First it's Dhritarashtra, then Sanjaya and Arjuna. Why isn't all of Bhagavad-Gita just narrated by Sanjaya, for instance?
Yes. Good point. And something just to confuse you even more, Baladev Vidyabhushan in his commentary, he says, actually, we shouldn't forget that this whole thing is being spoken to, is it Janamejaya? Is it? Now I'm mind blanking. Don't forget that this is also being spoken by a sage, in Naimisharanya, and there's a whole extra layer as well. So just to confuse you all even more, he said, don't forget there's a whole extra layer to this being narrated. We just find this is how Shastras relate. Shastras always relate in how do you put it? It's window narrative. It's framing narrative within framing narrative within framing narrative. So we have to remember that actually this whole Mahabharata is being recited by some sages in Naimisharanya, I'm pretty sure as well. There's some sages in Naimisharanya who are speaking Mahabharata. There's one sage who's speaking it to other sages, right? Oh, has somebody sent the names? I'm mind blanking the names completely. Okay, yeah, nested conversation. Yes. So there's some sages who are speaking it, and then they're saying what they've heard, and then they're saying what they've heard. So it goes in like these brackets, if you get what I mean. So if you get that context, he's relaying what he's heard, who's relaying what he's heard, right? Because it's sort of like this parampara. That's how Smriti-shāstrā works, because it's based on the realizations and thoughts of these different sadhus. It matters which sadhu has thought them and how he has had them thought. Yes, that's it. Vaishampayana and Jaymini, right? So it's a conversation between them two, and then he's saying it's a conversation with them, and then it's a conversation with them. It's also because that's just how Mahabharata is structured, right? It's structured as this overarching narrative, and now he's explaining why it's okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, because I remember Janamejaya. Anyway, so Mrugank Prabhu's shared the names. So the whole thing is structured like this. It's like it's this whole as was said, it's like a nested conversation. So the names are all mentioned so we can just keep track of who's speaking, right? So we can keep track of that. Also, we should remember that Bhagavad-Gita comes in the context of Mahabharata. So it's a longer story, right? And it's being nested within it. So we know the narrators for that purpose. There was another point I was going to make, but I've forgotten it. So if I remember it, I'll share it in the WhatsApp group. Does that clear up your question, or did I miss it? I feel like I've missed it.
I know that makes sense. Thank you. Also,
okay.
Quick question. So I think Bhagavad-Gita was initially written by Vyasadeva.
Was initially written by Ganesh, right?
Oh, yes, written.
Yeah.
And so is this the same Vyasadeva who's like the son of Satyavati and wife of King Shantanu?
To my understanding, it is, but I haven't looked into that deeply. There are multiple Vyasadevas who pop up. Like a Vyasadeva is technically just a job. That's why we always say there'll always be like when you see Vyasadeva being mentioned, there's a name before it to clarify which Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is just somebody who divides the Shastra, right? But to my knowledge, it's the same one, but I could be wrong. I haven't really looked into it too much. But as far as I understand, it is that Vyasadeva. But it could technically be another one. I just doubt it. Because in Bhagavatam, we hear about him dividing the Shastras, but it could be that he's dividing it that somebody else wrote. Again, to my knowledge, it is, but I can't really say confidently. I haven't really read into that too much. Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, we will conclude for today. But before we conclude, so homework-wise, because we've already read the first chapter, anyone who's already read the first chapter, there's a little activity I'd like you to do. And we'll do these activities from the beginning, from here on in. But I didn't want to overload you. That's why I didn't say it initially. For those of you who haven't finished the first chapter, please just finish the first chapter because we will finish it next week. Go over the first chapter now. Don't worry about the purports, not because the purports aren't important, but just look at all of the texts and try to, as you go over the text, try to divide them into their own sections. I've given an overview, which normally I wouldn't do before I give this activity, but just try on your own. Because you might disagree with the way the text is structured. Like you can structure it in different ways, just so you get a flow of the first chapter. It'll help you internalize what we're talking about, so it doesn't seem jumping around. So go through the first chapter just shloka-wise and try to divide it in sections where you can see there's a clear section break, and then give a name to each one of those sections. This will really help you internalize the flow of the first chapter, so you can really have it stuck in your mind as we discuss it further. That's for those of you who finished the first chapter. For those of you who haven't, don't worry, just please finish the first chapter. But starting from the second chapter, I'm going to make that activity for everyone to do, right? Because we'll spend much longer time focusing on each one of the later chapters. Okay, so with that, if there's any questions, ask now, or you can message in the WhatsApp group, so on and so forth. I'm going to upload the recording after today. I'm not sure if you saw in the WhatsApp group, but I just upload them into that playlist. The playlist is in the WhatsApp description. Okay. Do you have any more questions? Say it now or forever hold your peace. Done. Okay. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.